Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. I recently shot a video about troubleshooting your HID headlights electrical side, and while I was doing that, I noticed that the headlights didn't look quite right, and I also noticed that at night they weren't as crisp as they should be. Usually I do this every so often, but this time I'm going to do it a little bit more in depth. However, if you notice this light here, it's a little bit yellow. This door is a very bright white, so the light's a little bit yellow and the line's a little bit fuzzy. And this is real close up to the light, so this should be very crisp at this point. And the farther out that this goes from the vehicle, you're going to notice that this gets even more distorted. So I'll bring the camera up and show this to you. However, if you come back over here to this light here, you can see that this light is noticeably whiter and that this line is a lot more crisp. So same thing over here. As this light gets out, it would distort more. So we have a very crisp, clean light here, and I'm going to show you the difference in these two headlights and show you what I did between this light and that light. So as we come over here, you can see how this line is a little bit fuzzy. It's kind of hard to tell because the light's getting washed out with the camera, but you see how this looks really thick. And over here, it's not quite as thick. This line's a little bit more crisp, and you can see that the white on here is pretty white, and over here it's a little bit of a yellowy color. So looking at the headlight, this is going to be really hard to show with the headlights on, and I'll probably just shut the headlights off, but you can see how the light is hitting the lens here. You see this little spot right here, and there's a lot of refractory going on right here. The lens is just dirty, cloudy, wearing, and you can see how there's like a haze on the headlight here. So this can cause you issues over time, and especially if you let it go too long. So we went ahead and did this side. And you can see that we have a spot here. It's not quite as large as the other side. You can see that it's got some clearer spots in that actual light where it's hitting that lens. And if you cover this up, you can still see that it's got a little bit of a discoloration, but it's a lot more clear. It doesn't have so much yellow on it. So what we did here was we polished these headlights. Now, this is a preventative maintenance. This is something you should do yearly, if not every 6 months. And the only reason I tell you that is because not doing it will end up with you buying new headlights. So yeah, everybody's heard of polishing headlights. Everybody has heard the wives' tales of you can use toothpaste and a toothbrush and, this and that and whatever. Anyway, this has been the best product I've seen yet. And the only reason I like this is because it gives you the sanding pads in here, which it includes a multitude of them. So it's got a couple different ones. It looks like it's got 6 of their gold ones, 3 of the white ones, and then their refinishing one. Okay, so the refinishing one is like 3000 grit, and it steps down in grits, so that if you have a headlight that's extremely pitted or extremely bad, you don't have to go at it with a 3000 grit and just work and work and work and work. So you step up, gives you a nice backing plate and a nice compounding pad. And they give you a little sample of the rubbing compound that they use. However, it's never enough. So I have an old one here that has been well used, and the pad here. And this is the little finishing disc here, and these all apply to this pad. Now for something like this that's not real bad, I'll hit it with a 3000 to just keep going over and over and over. And I'm going to demonstrate that for you so you can actually see what you're supposed to be looking for. And what I've found is that Meguiar's makes a plastic X compound, and I like this. It works well for me. If you have your own compound that you would like to use, that's fine. However, I suggest buying something that's made for plastics. Now, the reason I say that is because these new plastics, they have problems with UV. So you can use buffing compound on it and polishes for like your automotive paint. However, it doesn't provide the protection, so to speak, that plastic would really need. And this is supposed to provide that. Now, if it does or not is unbeknownst to me, not a chemist, so I don't know. It's just I know that it works, and I haven't polished these headlights in probably a year, and they're starting to show, and I haven't even sanded them in probably a few years. So I've just been hitting it with the compound and this compounding pad. Now, it keeps them looking nice. It keeps the finish looking nice. They don't yellow up really bad. But today I'm going to show you the difference between one that I have already done, which I've sanded it with a 3000 and I've compounded it. And I'm going to show you this side here that I didn't do. And you'll actually be able to see the noticeable difference in these headlights. And that will translate to a much better light output on the road. So you can see here that our left-hand headlight over here is much clearer than our driver's side headlight on this side. And if you sit down and actually look at it, you can definitely tell the difference. So you have this one here. It's very clear, very crisp. Looks very nice, and this headlight was actually really bad. It had gotten something on it driving down the highway. Don't know what it was, but it ate at the plastic, and that's what all these little white spots are in here. So those are permanent etches in the plastic, and I was able to sand those out with that 3000. It just took me a little bit of time, but this is sanded and polished, and it's very squeaky clean. So polishing definitely helps. Sanding helps even more. So I'm going to show you what this light did look like. It looked like this. You can see how this headlight's very hazy looking. It's got like a yellow hue to it. You can actually tell the difference between the bottom lens and the top lens here. And you can see that these have started to yellow. Now this yellow is going to transmit through your headlight beam and give you a poor quality of headlight projection. So while it may not look bad to you, this is actually hindering your distance, your width, and your quality of light. So this makes a big difference. So over here, you can see the reflection of the light in the door there. You can see how it's much whiter and looks much more refined. And let's see if we can get you to see a little bit of a glare in this light, but I don't think it's going to happen. But you can see there's pitting in this actual lens from that acid or whatever that hit this light. But it's up here out of the beam pattern, not so much down here. There's a little bit down here, but it's definitely not going to hinder as much as this yellow light here, which you can see that this light is not very crisp, the reflection here, and that it's got a little bit of a yellowy gray hue to it instead of that nice crisp white. So I'm going to sand these down for you, and I'm going to polish them up for you so you can see exactly what we're doing here. And I'll speed this process up a little bit because it can take some time. So I'll speed it up so that you're not sitting there just watching me twiddle my thumbs while I'm sanding this. First thing you want to do here is you want to clean this headlight. So we've already cleaned this headlight. I've wiped it down because whenever I started the video, I wanted to have a clean headlight to give you an idea on what we were looking at. So I'll use glass cleaner for this. You can use spray detailer. Any kind of lubricant is fine. You'll put your pad in the drill here and apply your sanding disc, whichever you choose. Now, like I said, we're starting with the 3000 here because these headlights aren't necessarily horrid, and you just go to town. Now, you don't need to go very fast with this. You just need to keep firm pressure. You don't need to be, pushing on it real hard. You just need to keep it to where you have good contact and you're doing some material cutting. So you can see that this foam has started to turn a yellowy color. And one disclaimer I'm going to tell you is if you start to sand any of your chrome here, it's going to show. So be very careful when you're doing this. Don't let the drill get away from you and get into any of your paint or your chrome, because it will show. So I'm going to wipe this off here. And you can see how very yellow that is. Now that is all of the top layer of plastic that has started to change. So it's very important that you do this. So just wipe this off every so often. And you'll notice that the lens will be hazy now, but it'll be a white haze. So at this point, we're going to keep sanding here. And you can kind of see the difference between this side and this side, because I didn't sand this at all. You can see how this is a little bit hazy but clear, and this is hazy but yellow. So reapply your lubricant, whichever you choose. And continue sanding. So you can see how this foam up here is a little bit more white, and this side's very yellow. And that is because we have removed more material here so much, so we're getting down into the clear side of the lens. So you'll see that this is still very yellow, and this side's extremely yellow. So we have a little bit of yellow and very yellow. So every so often, after you do one layer, wipe it off, start over again, and keep sanding till you get almost all of that yellow out. You are going to make a mess doing this, as you can see by all of the lubricant flying everywhere. And one thing you do not want to do is stay in one spot too long. So you can see we're still a little bit yellow here, but definitely not nearly as bad as it was. And as you take this off, you'll notice that any of this stuff that splatters anywhere, so you can see we have it on the can here, it's kind of got like a chalky residue to it. And that's basically the plastic that you're taking off. And it's fine, and it creates a deposit. So we're getting pretty close here. I'm going to do this maybe two more times. So you can see it's still a little bit of a yellow texture to it, or yellow hue rather. But it's definitely not nearly as bad as it was. So we'll hit this one more time here, and we will go ahead and then start our polish. Now at this point, you can look at this lens very closely and see if you have any imperfections that maybe need to be concentrated on a little bit more. Now when you're doing this, you want to make sure that this pad is very flat against this headlight. You don't necessarily want to be shoving it into the headlight, and you don't want to be riding on it like this unless you're doing an edge where you're trying to match that contour of that edge. So these have like a little bit of a 45 on the sides here. So the only time you would do the edge like this but you'd want to keep nice light pressure, because as you're cutting along these corners, you're going to take more off of this rise where it bends over. So you don't want to be putting a lot of pressure on that. Now, as we're going along here, you can also see that this foam is taking a different way of laying, I guess you would say. You can see that it wants to kind of run away. It doesn't seem to foam up as badly, and that's because you're getting a lot more of the better material. So you can see that that yellow has almost disappeared at this point. So now what you want to do is you want to go ahead, spray this again, and clean it. Now you always want to clean it before you move to a next step of sanding or anything like that. So if you go from the heavy grit to the next grit, always clean this very well before you start on your next one. So now we have a headlight here, and it's a little bit hazy. So you can see we have a haze in here, but the light reflection in the door is now no longer yellow. You can see we have a nice clear on this side. So now we're going to get you clear like this. So this is your final step here for sanding. Like I said, we didn't do the heavier sandings because these didn't need it. If you buy that kit, it gives you the heavier sand. I would always start on the lighter side because you can always go heavier, and starting on the heavy side just provides you with more work. So we're going to go ahead and buff these out and get a nice clear lens. So we're going to take our sanding pad off of here and install our compounding pad. So we're going to use the compound that I bought and just put a little bit on the pad here. You don't need a whole lot, and when you start this, start slowly. Work the compound all around the headlight a little bit here. Constantly moving the drill. You don't want to focus too much in one spot and possibly burn the plastic. At this point here, I didn't do the side here, but we're going to wipe this off. And I'm going to show you if we can see the difference here between the clear and the hazy. So you can see the headlight is a lot more clear. And if you watch the reflection in the door, so the square light there, you can see as we crest around here, it gets a little hazy. I stopped polishing right in this general area. You can see that that reflection starts to get hazy and less crisp as we round the corner here. And then out in the front here, it gets a lot more crisp. So we're going to go ahead and polish this side and finish doing this. We'll polish this whole headlight at least one more time. So same thing here, a little bit on the pad. And we'll go ahead and do this side corner here. So you can see we're getting a little bit of orange here, and this is likely just grime and sanding compound and everything else that's in the lens, so because you're still cutting with this pad, so you're going to get a little bit of material, but you're also disintegrating the pad at the same time. So this is a mixture of both of those things here. So we've done that corner here, and I'm going to do the whole thing one more time. I usually go until it looks like all the polish is gone, because you don't want it to be dry either. So this should be the last step for us for polishing this. Yes, I know I'm using paper towels, but don't want to use a microfiber for this because there's still a lot of dirt on everything else, and I don't feel like destroying a microfiber. This paper towel is not going to make a difference for any of that. So you can see how much different this headlight now looks, and we'll compare it to the other one here and turn the headlights back on and show you the difference in the door. So you can see now that the light here matches the light over here. They are extremely similar in color, and you don't have too much of a fog in between this hard, crisp line. And I know it's really hard to tell on the camera because the camera adjusts for the light, but this line is no longer fuzzy. So you have a white, yellow, and then you have a hard line, and then you get a little bit of a lens flare there just on top of that line. But this line is a lot more crisp, and it's just as crisp as this one over here. And you can see we have a little there. Now you might not be able to see, but there's a little bit of purple here, and that's just because of the way the headlight is designed. But this is about as white of a light as you can get. You can see that it's borderline turning back into a yellow hue here. But as you get out farther here, you can see that it's a lot more white. So I'm going to go ahead and show you the lens on this light here and show you what the difference is here, because since we showed you this earlier in the video, you'll be able to return back, or I can throw it in here and show you the difference in the light, the way it reflects in the lens. So remember before we had the huge spot in this lens here that you could see, and I'll bring that back up here so you can see actually the difference between this and the other one. And you can see how that light is not being refracted by the lens anymore, and all of your projection is done in the actual projector itself. So sanding this down gives us our nice clear lens again, and then polishing it takes that lens and gets rid of all those really fine scratches. And this is what you want. You want to have a nice clear headlight like this, so you can have a nice crisp bean pattern like that. So this is what you want. You don't want this line to be foggy or fuzzy or anything like that. You want it to be nice, sharp, and crisp. That way that light projects out, it continues to be nice and crisp. So at this point, this is what we want. We didn't want that yellowy, fuzzy light. So this is why I suggest doing this. Like we started in the video, I had mentioned about doing this every so often. I had explained how often I did mine. However, this is not something that is portrayed to you or suggested to you by anybody. The newer headlights do not have the protection from the elements like the old headlights did. They're not glass. The plastics have definitely changed over the past 20 some odd years. The marker lights that are in this truck are from 2006, if not older, because I may have had them in another truck. But they still look just as good, minus their wear and tear from road debris and everything like that, as these headlights that are a few years old. And so the plastics have definitely changed, and I highly recommend buffing the headlights with the compounding pad and plastic compound at least every 6 months. You can stretch it to a year if need be, depending on your vehicle storage and how much you drive it. So how much it sits in the sun, how much it gets out in the weather. But I would recommend doing that at least once a year at minimum. Twice a year is always best. It doesn't take long. It's a lot easier to polish them than it is to let them get very bad and have to go through the whole process. So I sanded these today with a 3000 grit. I probably haven't polished them in about a year and a half. I haven't sanded them in probably 2 or 3 years. But I have buffed them. I think it was a year and a half. It might have been a year, but it's been a while. So buffing them will definitely help. The little 3M kit that I purchased here, I like it because it gives you the drill attachment and it's easy to use. You're not using a big cumbersome buffer. This is something that anybody would have as long as you had a drill. But little stuff like this will definitely make your vehicle look better and also be safer at night. And then also at the same time, reduce glare to oncoming drivers. That fuzziness that you're getting on the headlight here could also distract and glare out to other drivers because the light is no longer being focused. It's being refracted by the crap on the lens, the dirt, the nicks, the yellowing, and it gets refracted and it shines out where it's not supposed to, giving you a worse beam pattern, less visibility, and distracts oncoming drivers. So this little bit of time that you take to clean up your headlights will make your vehicle look better, make your headlights last longer, and be safer out there on the road at night. So hopefully you guys can take something away from this video by doing a little bit of your own maintenance, trying to make your money go further. So hopefully this helps you guys out, and I appreciate you watching. So thanks for watching, guys, and we'll catch you on the next one.